We walk through life feeling incredibly confident about our assessment of the world around us, right? We think we know exactly what's safe, what's dangerous, and what's highly likely to happen on any given Tuesday. But what if I told you that confidence is, well, it's often a total illusion? In this explainer, we're going to look at how our deepest certainties, the things we feel absolute conviction about deep in our gut, are very often just glitches in our mental software.
So think about this. What if your brain actually mistakes what is memorable for what is true? We really love to imagine our brains as these perfectly rational, high-powered computers, carefully crunching statistics and calculating probabilities before gracefully handing us a logical conclusion. But it turns out our collective confidence in that idea is completely misplaced. That's simply not what happens up there. Instead of doing the actual math, our minds are constantly taking these massive shortcuts. We bypass the rational calculations entirely and rely on a deeply flawed, highly biased substitute, our own memory.
Psychologists actually have a name for this specific glitch. They call it the availability heuristic. Now, don't let the academic jargon fool you here. This isn't some abstract theory. This is a literal, hardwired bug in human cognition. It's a mental shortcut where our brains lazily decide that if something is easily remembered, it must automatically mean it's highly probable. I mean, think about how crazy that is. If an example springs to mind without any effort, your brain immediately concludes, wow, that must happen all the time. We are judging the likelihood of an event based entirely on how easily we can recall it, while completely, utterly ignoring the actual real-world statistics. To see exactly how this plays out in the real world, just think about the statement, flying is dangerous. It's a fear that almost all of us have felt at some point. Think about what happens in your brain every single time there's a dramatic plane crash on the evening news. You see the twisted metal. You see the somber reporter standing in front of the wreckage. You feel the sheer devastating scale of the event as it just dominates the 24/7 news cycle for days on end. Suddenly, the mere thought of stepping onto a commercial airliner feels instantly terrifying. Your brain effortlessly retrieves those vivid, horrifying images, and the availability heuristic starts screaming at you that flying is an incredibly risky, dangerous thing to do. But here is the massive gap between that visceral perception and the actual statistical reality. Traveling by a standard car is actually 700 to 1,000 times more likely to result in a fatal accident than flying on a commercial airline. 700 to 1,000 times. Just sit with that math for a second. The mundane drive to the airport is statistically the most dangerous part of your entire vacation. Yet, how many of us break out in a cold sweat when we merge onto the highway during our daily morning commute? How many of us grip the steering wheel on sheer terror on a Tuesday morning? Almost none of us. But the second that plane hits a tiny bit of turbulence, our heart rate spikes right up into the stratosphere. We have this fantastically sarcastic contrast in human behavior, and it's entirely dictated by how our memory logs trauma. We fear planes because the crashes are dramatic, they're cinematic, they're devastating, and, most importantly, they are completely unforgettable. They burn themselves into our memory banks. Car accidents, on the other hand, well, they happen every single day. They are tragically routine. Unless it's a massive 50-car pileup, they don't even make the local news. So because car accidents are mundane and boring, our brain doesn't easily retrieve them as a profound threat. We're left with this paralyzing fear of highly unlikely, unforgettable events, combined with a total apathy toward the statistically deadly reality of daily life. And this glitch doesn't just apply to massive global events like commercial aviation. It happens right in our own backyards, sparking local paranoia all the time. Imagine a scenario where just 3 people in your neighborhood come down with a disease like dengue fever. Instantly, a new absolute truth crystallizes in your mind. Everyone is getting dengue. It becomes the only thing anyone is talking about. It dominates the chatter over the backyard fence, it floods the community online forums, and it totally consumes the local coffee shop gossip. Suddenly, your perception is that a massive plague is sweeping through the population, and it's really only a matter of time before absolutely everyone gets infected. But the reality, the actual boots-on-the-ground data, most areas remain completely unaffected. The vast majority of the city hasn't seen a single case. Yet we easily trick ourselves into believing an entire region is under siege by a virus simply because the few examples we do have are geographically close to us and incredibly easy to recall. We take a microscopic, highly available sample size and we confidently project it onto the entire world. Now introduce modern technology to this equation, and this psychological bug goes into absolute overdrive. Consider how information spreads to us today. Imagine one single scammer story occurs. Just one actual isolated event out there in the world. But here's how you experience it. First, you see a panicked viral post about it on your social media feed. Then, a few hours later, it pops up as a heavily capitalized forwarded warning in your aunt's WhatsApp group. Finally, you catch a dramatic segment about it on the evening news broadcast. In the span of a single week, your brain has registered 3 separate, highly alarming inputs. The availability heuristic kicks in and tricks your brain into creating 3 distinct memories of a massive threat, completely inflating the perceived volume of danger, even though it all stems from just one isolated event. This leads to a purely absurd contradiction in how we navigate risk. On one hand, you have the perceived threats. Because of those vivid, highly available stories echoing around family group chats, people become utterly convinced that the entire internet is just one giant viral heist waiting to happen. They treat every casual link like a ticking time bomb. But on the exact same day, those same perfectly terrified people will happily click I agree on a dense, 40-page terms and conditions document from a startup company they've never even heard of. They won't read a single line of it. They are fully confident that this massive, legally binding document is the safe part of the internet. Why? Simply because reading dense legal terms doesn't evoke a dramatic, easily recalled memory of sudden danger.
So the next time those internal alarm bells start ringing, whether it's a fear of a plane crashing, a neighborhood rumor spreading, or an internet scam wiping out your bank account, we all need to take a collective pause. When that visceral feeling of absolute certainty washes over you and you feel dead sure about the likelihood of something happening, remind yourself of one absolutely crucial fact. Your judgment is not the one doing the talking.
That feeling, that absolute conviction, that is just your memory, bragging about the last scary thing it saw on a screen. Your memory is aggressively pushing these vivid, horrifying images to the very front of your mind, and it is doing so with the sheer, unearned confidence of someone who has never once been asked to show their mathematical work. It doesn't have the statistics, it doesn't have the data, it just has a really compelling, deeply scary picture. Knowing that our deepest convictions about danger and probability are often just our brains taking the lazy path of least resistance leaves us with a lot to unpack. The next time you feel a surge of certainty, take a breath and ask yourself, is this actually true or is it just memorable? Will you ever trust your brain's gut feeling the exact same way again? Keep questioning those mental glitches and never stop exploring how your mind really works.